It's time to talk about the reality beneath the surface of what we call mental difference, neurodivergence, autism, ADHD, and the full spectrum of so-called cognitive disorders is not simply a matter of individual biology or unlucky genetics. It is the reflection of something much bigger, the way evolution hedges its bets when the world itself starts to break from the mold. We're living through a century of cascading uncertainty, where old structures are failing and predictable routines have lost their grip on reality. In times like these, variation is no longer just tolerated, it becomes the strategy. For most of modern history, societies have tried to flatten human diversity. Factories, schools, and bureaucracies were designed for compliance, routine, and predictability. These systems rewarded the median, the average, and anything that veered from that average was branded as deviant, broken, or in need of fixing. But as these same systems begin to buckle under their own weight, the value of conformity evaporates. Suddenly, minds that don't fit, minds wired for something different, are suddenly the ones capable of recognizing, mapping, and adapting to a world in rapid transition. Neurodivergence is not an evolutionary mistake. It is, in the language of science, a persistent and increasing variance within the population, one that remains despite decades of attempts to suppress or treat it out of existence. Why? Because variation is how biological systems future-proof themselves against collapse. When the conditions change, traits that once looked maladaptive may become exactly what is needed to meet the moment. What's fascinating is how this has become more visible in recent decades, not because humans are changing more than ever, but because the world around us is shifting at speeds that force the emergence of difference. Autistic minds, for example, excel at pattern recognition, system building, and the pursuit of internal consistency. ADHD brings with it the capacity for rapid attention shifting, novelty seeking, and adaptive improvisation. When these traits are forced into static environments, they clash with the status quo, often causing distress, anxiety, or isolation. But as soon as the landscape itself becomes volatile, those same minds are positioned to see what others can't, move when others are stuck, and model futures most people can't imagine. This isn't a romantic story about suffering. It's the logic of adaptation in action. Speaking for myself, as someone with ADHD, a combination of autistic and ADHD wiring, the most liberating shift in my life came when I discovered exponential thinking. Before then, my thoughts had a tendency to spiral, whenever left without a goal or a structure to grow into. That's the reality for many people with ADHD. The mind races, jumps between ideas, and can't seem to settle on anything for long. For me, exponential thinking was the missing piece. It provided a way to take that restless energy and scale it up, building trajectories, forecasting consequences, and extending my vision far beyond the immediate moment. Instead of spiraling out, I learned to ride the curve, to project my thoughts into meaningful arcs, to anticipate change instead of being overwhelmed by it. That's not just a coping strategy. It's a way of seeing the world that matches the era we're living in. We are surrounded by exponential trends, climate feedback, technological acceleration, cultural upheaval. The skills needed to track these trends, recognizing inflection points, mapping cascading outcomes, making sense of apparent chaos, are increasingly found in those who were never comfortable with the rigid, step-by-step, linear models of the past. Science confirms that many of us have lived. Populations survive change by increasing their diversity. Ecological systems resist collapse when they have multiple strategies in play, not just one dominant form. Neurodivergence isn't a fluke. It's the biosphere's attempt to cover its bases as the stakes go up. In this sense, Gaia's Gambit is simply the tendency of life to spread its bets when the future is uncertain. Some traits may fail. some may vanish, but the collective experiment gives the species a shot at persistence. But here's the catch. Social systems are often the last to adapt. Our schools, workplaces, and health institutions are still optimized for a reality that no longer exists. They punish the very differences that are most needed for adaptation, pathologizing outlier minds rather than learning from them. The rise of phenomena like Cassandra syndrome, where those who accurately predict danger are dismissed or scapegoated, shows just how much risk we run by refusing to listen to divergent perception. This is not just a personal issue, and it's not just about fairness. The survival of complex societies may well depend on how quickly we can shift from policing difference to valuing it. We need structures that reward early detection, systems modeling moral discomfort with dysfunction, and the capacity to pivot under pressure. We need to design for minds that thrive in complexity, that can scale their thinking and refuse to settle for easy answers when the world is changing too fast for old logic to apply. Gaia's Gambit is neither mystical nor sentimental. It is the simple, relentless drive of life to endure by any means necessary. Neurodivergence is the signal that the experiment is ongoing, that evolution has not picked a winner, and the future remains open. The question facing us now is whether our societies will catch up to what biology has already put in motion. History will not reward those who cling to uniformity for comfort. It will reward those who can scale their vision, recognize emergent truth, and build new systems where difference is the basis of collective survival. Neurodivergence is not an aberration. It is humanity's last evolutionary bet, a wager that in the turmoil ahead, it is the outliers, not the conformists, who will chart the course to what comes next.